Just a few days ago, the 2024 All-Star Game came to an end. Damian Lillard and Mac McClung both repeated in the three-point contest and dunk contest, and the weekend was highlighted by an entertaining All-Star Game. And by entertaining, I mean one of the worst All-Star Games ever played.
It comes to a merciful end. Go ahead, Joker. Get one up. It's a dunk contest.
I mean, what an absolute mockery to the event. But that's not what this video is about. See, the only good thing for you and me that came from this weekend is that we now have an up-to-date data set of all the All-Star Game box scores for us to be able to analyze. In today's video, we're going to be finishing out the three-part series of the All-Star Weekend and figuring out who is the GOAT of the All-Star Game. If you haven't seen the videos about the dunk contest and the three-point contest, I suggest you pause the video and make sure to check those out. Also, before we continue, I want to thank you all for the support so far for my channel. I only have a few uploads so far, but I've received a lot of support from you all. And if you want to keep supporting me, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on my analyses. The NBA All-Star Game is a tradition almost as long as the NBA itself. Just 2 years after the inception of the NBA, we saw the very first All-Star Game. This game included some all-time greats such as George Gervin, Bob Cousy, Paul Arizin, and Ed McCauley, leading the way for the East with 20 points, earning his team the win and himself the All-Star Game MVP. Over the next 73 years, for better or for worse, we've kept the tradition going, and with it, we have seen over 300 players selected to an All-Star Game, 345 to be exact. So, with 345 players, how do we find out who is the best of the best, the cream of the crop of these All-Star players selected? We've got some basic metrics such as points, assists, steals, blocks, and rebounds per games. We also have some All-Star specific stats such as All-Star Game MVPs, appearance, the number of times a player starts, and their start percentage, which is the number of times they've started out of the number of times they've appeared at the All-Star Game. And lastly, we have some advanced stats. I would have pulled more in, but due to the limited data we have around the All-Star Game box scores, the best I could do was look at effective field goal percentage, Hollinger assist ratio, game score, and PER. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at some of the categories I mentioned above. Starting with the All-Star Game appearances, we have LeBron James leading the way with 20 appearances. And as a side note, all 20 of those appearances were as a starter. Both of these are records that I'm sure will never be broken, and he has at least another one under his belt. Out of this current list, we only see 3 active players, with Kevin Durant being the only player who could actually move up on this list. Next category to look at is All-Star Game MVPs. Kobe is at the top of this with 4, which makes sense since the All-Star MVP award is named after him. We've got some of the GOATs of the sport as well, with Jordan and LeBron at 3 and 8 more with 2 MVPs. The last category we're going to look at is points per game. Unlike the other 2 lists, the players at the top of this might shock you. In his 2 All-Star Game appearances so far, Jaylen Brown has averaged 31 points per game. More impressively, he's accomplished this feat off the bench. A few other outliers are highlighted in blue. These players are players that only played in the All-Star Game once and happen to score high enough to put themselves into the top 20. The last list of players right here are highlighted in red. These are players that have a chance to make multiple more All-Star Games, but what is even more interesting is that most of this group of players have only played in 5 or less All-Star Games. Why is this important? Why do I call this out? Well, based on historical trends of the All-Star Games in the last 10 years, their points per game should only go up. As we saw with this last All-Star Game, a team surpassed the 200-point mark. You don't think if Embiid was healthy and able to play that he would have dropped more than 24 points per game and increased his average? Pretty soon this category is just going to be a list of current players. Right now, 12 of the 20 players are still in the league, and once LeBron, Curry, Westbrook, Kyrie, and Durant retire, I'm almost positive that most of their names will be replaced within the next 5 to 7 years. So with this category, take it with a grain of salt because this is by far the one with the most outliers and the most variance of the group. Now to the moment you've all been waiting for. Who cracked the top 50 and who separated themselves from the rest of the pack to be named to go to the All-Star Game? To no surprise, it is the one who currently holds some unbreakable records, and it's LeBron James. He had a total score of 28, barely edging out Kobe Bryant. LeBron was in the top spot of 3 categories and in the top 25 of several more. Highlighted on the left side is the top 10 list. Using the eyeball test, we have some all-time greats here. If you look into each of these players' All-Star Game individual stats, you would probably agree with this top 10 list. The one standout to me initially was Isaiah Thomas, but after looking into his stats, he has 2 MVPs, 10 starts out of 11 appearances, and averaged about 17 points and 9 assists per outing. So, I think he's justified. We also have a great mix of current and former players. 18 out of the 50 players on this top 50 are currently active NBA players, with only 13 of them having a realistic chance of making another All-Star game. As I mentioned before, this is heavily influenced by the lack of defense in today's game, so points per game and efficiency are going to heavily influence current players. To this point, this is by far and away the biggest flaw of the model. But at the end of the day, when we look at overall GOAT conversations in the NBA, we have players like Jordan, LeBron, Kareem, Shaq, Wilt, Bird, Bill Russell, and Kobe usually ending up somewhere in the top 10. And looking at this list that the model spit out, they all made the top 50. So take it or leave it, the model did a great job capturing most of the all-time great players. So let me know your thoughts with this list. Is there a favorite all-star player that didn't make this list? Do you have a better list out there than me? Let me know in the comments, and until then, I'll see you all at the start of the next quarter.